Whether you need help weaning your baby or you have a fussy child at home, I mean, I think every child's fussy to a degree at some point, but this episode is going to be for you. Now, I've got sat next to me the most incredible guest. Not only is she a friend, a nutrition inspiration for me, I used to go to her talks and I took so much away from it. The incredible registered nutritionist, Charlotte Sterling-Reed, is here to debunk all of these crazy myths and guide you through this incredible subject of childhood nutrition. Now, Charlotte's got a lot of credentials, so I'm going to do my best to reel off a few of them here, but she has 3 Sunday Times best-selling books. I've seen her flourish in this space online with her Instagram account as well. She does a lot of partnerships with incredible brands where she makes a really big difference to those companies and makes sure that there's healthier options for your kids out there. She's appeared on so many TV channels, so many: BBC, Sky News, Channel 5, ITV. She's been on Good Morning Britain, featured in so many magazines. I don't even know where to start. The Telegraph, Women's Health, the list goes on. But I think what really is so special about the conversation that we're going to have is that she lives and breathes this. She's got 2 children. She's a mum like I am. And I feel like there's no judgment here. It's a safe space. She's got over 370,000 people following her online. So there's a lot of positive things here we can say. And without a further doubt, let's crack on. Hello, Charlotte.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
We finally get you back because the first time you came on was about 7 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago because it was right at the start, I think, of you doing
right
the podcast.
At the start of Food for Thought. So now it feels all snazzy in the studio.
It's amazing. Well, we were in a studio before, but it was a smaller studio.
It was, before cameras.
It was so early days in terms of doing podcasts. So you were like one of the first ones, weren't you?
Yeah. It's so weird, but we're doing something new. So we start with our guests with a sort of warm-up round. So I've got a few questions.
Sure.
Can't wait to hear what you're going to say. So what is the one thing you cannot live without?
Okay, I'm going to have to say my kids because life's changed and that is it. That's what I live for these days.
I know.
It's probably quite cliche, but true.
No, I love it. I absolutely love it. What's your favourite way to unwind?
Oh, book, bath and candle. That's genuinely how I shut off at the end of the day.
Perfect. Book, bath, candle. I love that. I need to do a lot more of that.
All the bees.
It's it is. BBC. Oh, not plugging.
Not sponsored.
Not that. What inspires you most in your life?
Oh gosh. Inspires, that's so hard. I think inspiration for me comes from so many different walks of life. But one of the things I think really does inspire me is people who are confident, women who are confident, women who are unapologetic. That's what's inspiring me right now because I'm finding that myself, I'm trying to be a bit more of a confident person. And so, unapologetic women who are really confident. That's what
pretty
I'm
cool, isn't
inspired by.
I think because we just grew up in an era where it just wasn't the sort of we had to be very what's that funny meme? Very demure, very
towing the line and exactly.
Yeah.
And also I think self-critical. Like I definitely grew up self-critical and I think it is just everything that we viewed around ourselves, you know, what we saw on social media, how much women were attacked. And I honestly see women these days who have confidence, who don't care about what people say. And I just think I just want some of that. So that is definitely my inspiration for how to be in my next years.
I know. I mean, I love it. I think it's so important because at the end of the day, if we don't start acting that way, how can we expect the future generations to start to get some sort of,
exactly,
especially women. And
and my daughter, I look at her and I think she's so strong and she's so confident. And I'm like, do not lose that. You keep that because that is so important for life.
I know. I wonder when's the point we lose it? That's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast.
But one more question. So if you could travel anywhere in the world right now, where would you go?
Oh, I think I would go back to the Maldives. We just had a holiday in the Maldives and it was, it was life-changing. It really was. It was incredible. Just a different way of life. They had their own time zone. It was slow. It was beautiful. And I'd definitely go back there. Sign me up.
No, I know. I mean, that would be the absolute dream. Now, we're talking about some pretty hard-hitting stuff today because I think, first of all, disclaimer for everybody listening that when we discuss children's nutrition, it can be very emotive. Not everybody has the same luxuries in life to access the same tools. But what we're going to try and get to today is the nitty-gritty facts. So when we have this conversation, it's about to start. I just want to caveat by saying, I understand it's hard. but we're going to deliver the facts with the expert. So let's go. Recent research does suggest that ultra-processed foods, so UPFs, now account for 2/3 of children's diets. And I can only imagine that number is going up, sadly, probably not down. Why do you think this could be potentially damaging, maybe linked to childhood obesity, perhaps?
Oh, I think it's such a hard topic to talk about because, like you said, the caveat at the beginning, we live in an environment that is not set up for us to feed our children easily healthy food. Just so many reasons. And I think that the media wants one kind of answer, or people like to blame, whether it's the food industry or the supermarkets or parents. Everyone's looking for a blame. And I just think that it's so much more complicated than that. There isn't one person to blame.
No.
However, having said that, there's so many complications and confusions in the nutrition field, and there's judgment and there's shaming, and then there's also the confusion around like what is an ultra processed food. Like there's this argument of whether that should even be a term, or whether it's a useful term, whether it's useful for the food industry. Is it useful for parents? I don't know, because I think that it depends on what your understanding of ultra processed foods is. So that's just to say that this is why it's confusing. And also, we're parents. It's hard. It's hard to navigate being a parent. And so I think for parents, they're often thinking, we need to have help and support and shortcuts. And sometimes that might come in the form of, well, my child will eat this food.
Yes.
This is the food that I'm going to give them because it's easy, because it's so available, because hopefully it's going to be healthy for my child. And that's often, of course, not always the case. So, yes, sorry, I've got a really roundabout way of answering your question, but I totally do think that children aren't eating all the right foods all the time, of course. There are so many foods that might be classified as ultra-processed food that actually are good for your child. So things like bread and hummus and, sauces, they can add nutrients to your child's diet. So I think parents at the moment are almost feeling fearful, and I'm sure you'll agree, fearful of giving their kids all of these foods. And I really don't want parents to feel like that. It's hard enough as it is. However, having said that, yes, generally when you look at what our children are eating, they aren't often eating the best. And, there was a recent report came out looking at the first 1,000 days of life, which I know you talk about a lot, and it's such a passion of mine. Yeah. We know that children's appetites and their eating behaviours early on in life set patterns of eating, food behaviours, food preferences. That matters. That matters not just for now, but it matters for their long-term health. So if children are kind of coming on into their journey with food onto a diet that is not balanced and healthy and nutritious, then as they get older, they're going to follow that. And that's where we see things like childhood obesity, or it might be type 2 diabetes, or high blood cholesterol, lots of things that might happen when we get to adulthood that actually are almost set in stone slightly from children's age.
Which makes it really hard, because you've got parents that didn't have access to this information, about the first 1,000 days, or they don't have the privilege and the access to the variety that some parents are able to offer. And then they're not supported by the food system and the manufacturers, because they're then ploughing food that is full of, an ultra-processed food, it will be, generally speaking, not all of them, higher in fat, salt, sugar, but also the additional emulsifiers, preservatives, which we know have a place, but may not now be, as we know, beneficial perhaps for your gut bugs and all these different things. So what a minefield.
It's a minefield, but Rhi, it's a minefield for us who are literally working in this field. So you can imagine a parent who's swamped. We've just been talking about how hard it all is and the juggle. Imagine a parent who is swamped, who is then reading these headlines, who is trying to depict what to give my child. And then you team that with a child who is refusing foods or fussy or got allergies. And boom, how on earth are you supposed to get it right? So I really feel for parents right now. And I think there's a lot of parents who are really scared, who are confused, and almost probably on the verge of giving up, because nothing's right.
And it preys on their relationships with food, because the amount of people we have messaging us saying, I really thought I was doing the right thing. I've cut out all seed oils from my kids' diet and me, but it means their diet's now limited. And it is a vicious cycle. Now, one key food group, Charlotte, that I know you do a lot of speech talks, everything. I've been to see you do talks on this, is breakfast cereals in particular. Colours, flavourings, additives, visually appealing breakfast cereals. Are they enough to actually fuel our day Is it a problem? Is breakfast cereal, as some people on TikTok will say, just sugar in a packet?
I think the thing with breakfast cereals is, again, it's also nuanced. There isn't like a right or wrong with it. First of all, because actually breakfast cereals contribute hugely to children's vitamin and mineral intakes.
Yes.
So for some children, specifically, certainly in certain population groups, children are getting a lot of their vitamins and minerals from fortified breakfast cereals. So actually they do have an important place. However, yes, go down the cereal aisle, and you will see quite literally hundreds upon hundreds of cereals. Quite a few of those advertised towards kids. And the one that advertised towards kids often are actually higher in sugar. So yes, I definitely agree that we could be doing so much better. But one of the points I really wanted to try and make today is it is a bit tricky, because when you look at the food industry, say, well, do you know what? We produce what people buy. But then when you talk to parents and consumers, they buy what is produced. So it's a vicious circle. And I definitely think with breakfast cereals, we could do so much better. There are some good ones out there that are fortified, that are lower in sugar.
High in fibre.
Higher in fibre.
Yeah.
But some kind of processing often has to happen. In order for us to feed the millions of people on this planet, we do have to process some food. And unfortunately, we can't all go to a market and buy our food fresh and make it fresh at home.
We can't make our breakfast cereal every day.
We can't be making our breakfast cereal every day.
No.
We just can't. And so unfortunately, we do need some mechanisms of processing in order to allow us to feed a number of people in this way, and also be offering them things like fortification and vitamins and minerals. However, are we going about it in the right way? You know, we're adding so much sugar to these because actually that's what children will accept. But what does that do for our patterns of eating and the food choices? Is it
because children will accept? So, I mean, I know that you're not working for these, you know, these food manufacturers, but I do wonder sometimes because, for instance, just say my children had cereals this morning. We had a selection, obviously some lovely whole grain options on the table, and they love them. They love your classic biscuit things and cereals, and they love all of that. That's fine. But is it because they will accept it that companies add sugar to it? Or is it purely because they want people to buy more?
I think it's probably a bit of both. But I mean, I've worked with food brands previously where they are trying to create healthier options. Yeah. And they do this, you know, campaign, and they create a new product and they put it out there. Doesn't sell.
Yeah.
But there's loads of reasons for that. But sometimes when brands do create healthier options, there just isn't the market for them. Yes. Because, and this goes back to what I like to talk about, which is that our taste buds are being established from such an early age. You know, we are born with a preference for sweet foods.
Of course we are.
So children innately will go towards sugar and sweeter foods. Yeah. When they are then offered those during the weaning journey and the early years of their life, and they decide, well, actually this sweet stuff's really good because I'm genetically programmed to enjoy that more, then we have the problem that we have in that kids want that, parents want what kids will eat, food industry can provide it.
Yeah, so if anyone listening has younger children, start now, but I know it will be painful, but change, the more you expose, you will get there. What is your view, Charlotte, on people on TikTok, on social media? We know that less than 2% of nutrition advice is accurate.
Yep.
I mean, that's not surprising to us, but I think to a lot of people that'd be pretty shocked, because when somebody comes across with authority, when they're essentially these people are actors. I'm an ex-performer. I know. They stand there, they walk down the supermarket like, this is going to kill you. And I would never give my child this. And your child should be carnivore. They should eat eggs every morning and never go near a carbohydrate. How does that make you feel? And what would you say to people watching that?
How long have you got, really? Because I feel so strongly about this. And I love your calling out of it. I think the trouble is that when we give nutrition messages, we give them with an evidence-based head-on.
Yeah.
So we're going, okay, this is the research. This is what our government is saying, or what science is saying, or what latest research is saying. This is what all of the bodies who are studying our food and are regulating our food are saying. And then we're going, this is what my head is saying. And then we have to then put that into a really useful sentence for parents or for public to understand. Yeah. So we have a whole, let's say, kind of background that we're trying to put into this very simple message we're trying to portray. The people who are doing this other stuff, they don't have all that background. So all they're doing is going, here's a one-line message that sticks, that's easy to remember, that's catchy, that's, take media headlines, for example. Media headlines sell when they're more shocking. So what these people are doing is they're taking what's worked in the media, in the newspapers, in television. There's a reason why EastEnders ends with a duh, and you want to come in for the next
tune. But
exactly. There's a reason why it finishes, because leaves you wanting more. It leaves you on this like shock.
It's called a cliffhanger.
So these people are using all these strategies to go, let's get attention, let's get people in, let's tell them this shocking stuff that they are going to take at face value, because why wouldn't you? If somebody tells you this food is toxic, don't ever give this to your child. How simple is that message? Okay, I've got it, I've taken it on, I'll remember it. Whereas when you and I say, well, actually, it probably does have too much sugar, but actually here are some benefits to it. So really have it in variety.
Or in a smaller amount.
Amount.
And then you're fine.
Is that sexy?
No.
Is that shocking? Is that hooking you in? No. So this is the trouble with our evidence-based heads on. We aren't able to shock and hook and cliffhanger people, whereas people with no background do that. And then do you know what they do? They go, oh, by the way, buy my product, because actually this one is totally different. And I've seen people who do it, and then you look at their product and you're going, that's exactly what you've just slammed another product for.
And they say, don't eat food, eat my pills and powders.
Yes, completely. And they like I say, there's a certain person who I've got in mind who's brought out supplements, and he talks all about gummies, and he talks all about this terrible stuff in food and all these, chemicals. And then he's brought out these gummies with sugar.
He's got no qualifications. He's just a marketing guy, and he puts his nutrition hat on. And we both know who we mean.
God, sorry, I
do not want to give him this platform. He actually follows me, on social media.
Oh, really?
I don't know why, because I have actually used him as an example before. But fair play. Maybe there's hopefully a level of some kind of respect. But
well, maybe.
Don't know why.
But honestly, Rhi, I'm glad you've asked, because I really feel so strongly about it. And I really want the public to know that these sexy one-liner messages, they aren't necessarily, not always, but they're very unlikely to be based on fact, because you and I can't do the sexy hooks because it's not realistic.
We'd be struck off.
It's not accurate. It's not reliable. And when you are talking about science, you have to take all of that research into account. And not only that, practicalities. What's practical? Because telling a parent that this cereal is toxic is not practical for them.
What's interesting is that if everybody just ate more vegetables, instead of buying all these pills, powders and potions, we would be in a better place.
What can you add in to the diet?
What can you add in, not take out? An analysis looked at the content of lunch boxes. So this is a big one. And 3,000 children. So this is actually old as well, because it's between 2008 and 2017. And it said that 64% of the calories in those meals provided from the school, sorry, not lunch boxes, school dinners.
School dinners, got you. Okay, oh gosh,
That is just even worse. So the school dinners are giving parents and giving their kids 64% of calories from ultra-processed foods. When some kids, the only hot meal they get a day is at school. And when they perhaps don't eat well at home, they have an opportunity with their peers to try something at school. That's kind of shocking.
Oh, Rhi, this is another thing that it actually really upsets me. I feel like we really need an overhaul.
Like Jamie Oliver did ages ago.
Honestly,
what happened?
That man did so much great stuff for our country. But I feel like where we've, budget cuts, what always gets impacted is food and nutrition and health. And I think that people often don't value the importance of nutrition and health. But actually, the food that we eat when we're kids and when we're babies is literally the foundation of our future health. So what happens when we cut that stuff and when we reduce funding, that impacts the food that's on offer or the food that we eat. Or, an establishment like nurseries and schools and hospitals, we should be setting examples for what is good food. We should be helping to establish healthy behaviours at those places where children are literally learning. They should also be learning what good food looks like. And I think the school thing is really hard because it's so dependent. I personally believe it's really dependent on who's in charge of the school.
It is. And they have the power individually sometimes to implement certain changes. Obviously, there's so many restrictions, but it is.
Completely.
So what would you say, just going off topic a little bit, but you mentioned nurseries, just before we go back onto schools, everyone, because that is a big subject. The sugar. in nurseries. And I think this is an individual situation because the nursery I was at welcomed me in to talk to them, and they actually respected the fact. But parents can turn up with loads of cupcakes for a load of 2-year-olds, and technically 2-year-olds shouldn't really be having that much sugar anyway.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be the bar humbug parent, but I'm going to be honest, I'll let my kids have cake at birthday parties, but I don't think they need one every day of the week at nursery.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sorry if I'm in that camp, but I am. Opinion.
I think as well, the nursery thing is shocking. I remember when I was looking for nurseries for my son, and there was one nursery which from 6 months of age, they would be offering like a pudding, like a chocolate pudding and sauce. And I remember writing to them being like, is this what you'd be offering to my, I think my son was actually 9 or 10 months when he went for the first time, and not to that nursery because of the puddings.
Yeah.
But that's not appropriate. It's not appropriate for babies to be having cakes and sugary puddings at nursery. As they get older, sure. Yeah. But actually, there is so much you can do at a nursery setting. The puddings don't need to be high fat, high sugar, high salt options. No. You can absolutely make puddings that kids will eat, especially if you're starting from a 6-month-old and you're getting them used to a variety of flavors and
textures, because then their taste buds are full of sugar.
Completely. And you can offer 2 sittings. So a lot of the argument about nurseries is that, well, it's a good idea, it's a good opportunity to give children to eat 2 sittings so that if they don't eat their main, they're still getting calories and nutrients in that second course. Well, exactly. Yogurt. There's so many other things that we can offer. And like I say, I really struggle with that, especially the under 1, that we're offering them sweet, sugary puddings.
I'd say under 2.
Yeah, exactly. Or under 2, in the baby room, because my daughter was in the baby room. The fact that a lot of those children are being, and I cannot tell you the number of parents who write to me and say, I'm so upset. My child's been to nursery and I've just found out that they've had jelly and ice cream. They've never had that before in their life, and they've never been exposed to that kind of food. Now, I'm not saying that we should never be giving these foods to our kids. I am not saying that. I am saying I am a fan, as you are, of the first 1,000 days of life. Both of my kids didn't really have much in the way of sweets and sugar and anything like that until 2, because I was trying to almost do a little experiment with them.
Same, and I did 3 with Zachary.
Yeah, well, exactly. And I think, then my kids started to have little bits in their diet, but that's so different to having every single day having a pudding and a sweet pudding at nursery, at school. I do struggle with it. I do think that it does seem unnecessary, especially in a world where we are talking about, there being an obesity crisis and all of these things that are constantly in the headlines.
Regulate their own emotions at such a young age anyway, all through toddlerhood to those reception early pre-prep years at school. They can't regulate their feelings and their emotions. So how are they expected to even understand the food they're eating and how that can impact their mood?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think, like I said, these establishments are where our kids are learning and growing and developing and becoming little personalities outside of us. And I just feel like it's such a shame that we don't put more into early years. It's such a shame that we don't say, do you know what? This early years is the foundation of future health right here, right now. Let's make it really good.
We need the princess on our side.
We do.
We need Kate.
We do.
We need her to come and say, come on, early years.
Yeah, and I think she cares so much about this area. Yeah. And I think there's so much else. Obviously I'm flying the flag for food and nutrition, but there's loads of other things like, mental health and psychology. But for me, I just think the food is an easy thing to try and get right. And the other thing I think, with parents, we're starting to talk about this at like school age kids, whereas we really should be trying to help parents earlier. We should be trying to educate. And I know education doesn't work on its own. I absolutely do know that. But parents during pregnancy, post-pregnancy, are getting almost no support. They don't know what they should be feeding their kid or eating.
And health visitors shouldn't be giving that advice actually because they're not trained in it. And then they end up giving advice they've heard that our old wives tell sometimes, not all the time.
Exactly, that happens
a
lot.
But it can be a very dangerous path. There needs to be registered nutritionists. This is why we need the title protected guides for nutritionists. We need the chartered title so more job opportunities can open up to get people in the NHS, get them in schools.
Exactly this, because, without that, and it needs to be a multifaceted support network. Yes. And I just think, again, some countries do this really well. The maternity support is amazing. There's support at every turn. We just don't have it. And personally, I don't know about you, but I think since COVID, it's taken a bit of a downhill turn because there really isn't much support there. And I think if you are not putting funding into quite literally the next generation of people coming into this country, you're starting off on the wrong foot. So for me, me, that is the area to target, is that age, pregnancy, because that's also when we're sometimes more receptive to change. We're thinking, oh my God, this is also new. What shall I do? Tell me how to do it right. If we could actually put support systems in place that help people to do that, I think it would be really great. But yeah, there's so much more than just education.
There's
and I'm really
so
aware
much.
of that.
We could literally do a whole podcast just on school lunches and sugar and education.
Yeah.
This is so much.
I'm sorry, I could talk about this forever.
I think it's fantastic. We need the passion, and we're actually trying to help. And this is the challenge. So we know what the challenge is, everybody. We just don't have all the answers of how to implement it. But if you're a parent listening, you've missed that early 1,000-day stage. Your child is now going to school, and you are concerned about the school lunches, the hot dinners. What would your advice be? Because sometimes I've heard parents saying we actually opted for the vegetarian option because it didn't contain the processed meats. There was too much red and processed meat on the menu. How do you even navigate that?
Really hard. And now I've got 2 kids at school, so for me it matters so much, what they're eating. And some children are having breakfast, they're having lunch, they're having snacks, they may be having an after school snack at school if they're at the school for a long time. I find this really tough. I really do. So the first thing I would say is communicate with the school. Talk to them. Don't be afraid. Communicate with the catering company who is providing it. That's what I have done every single time. I've called the catering company. I've had lengthy conversations with them. So definitely do those 2 things. Communicate with your kids. So I talk a lot to my kids about what's on offer. Luckily at my son's school, they do have the puddings, which I'm not that happy about, but they do have a really fantastic salad bar. And my son loves his veggies. So he's always telling me, Mum, I had salad today, I had sweet corn, I had, so he's really
alongside the other
tucking
meal.
into
That's
that.
great.
And I'm absolutely loving that. So, communication is the first thing. And I think that the other thing I would say is try not to worry too much, because what is happening at home matters the most.
It does.
So many parents who say to me, oh God, they're eating really badly at nursery, they're having all these things, and they're forced to take, one more bite, and they're forced to finish their mains in order to get their pudding, and these things that we don't really recommend now. So a lot of that is happening. Gosh. And I say what happens at home is what is going to set their kind of future patterns and their behaviours, because that's what they'll emulate, that's what they'll copy, that's what they'll expect. So, I actually posted about puddings yesterday, and I had so many parents saying to me, but I've started to offer them now because at nursery they do, and they now expect them at home. And I say, well, you don't need to do that. You can have a different routine at nursery and a different routine at school, and stick to your own at home, because what you are doing at home, your role modelling, your behaviours, you don't need to finish it if you don't want to. That's going to stick in the long run.
Exactly.
So stick to
and
your guns.
And it's amazing how they do. It's you. And for anybody that wants to do something, because it's something that happens a lot, like Charlotte said, you do have the power. Do believe in yourself, because you could just get a group of parents from your year group together. You can then, speak to the head of year or whoever it is, who will then put you in touch with the catering company or whatever you need to do. And just say, we would just like to understand more what's going on. We'd like to speak to the nutritionist with the catering company and just understand what we can do. Because changes can happen. And
they can.
I had to do it at my son's school as well a few weeks ago.
Did you?
And we got changes really quickly.
That's amazing. That's
really
so good.
Quickly. As in, he was having croissants as a mid-morning snack. And now they're going back to healthier fibre-rich options.
Okay, that's really great. Yeah.
It was, but I think because of COVID and lockdown, the schools are finding it hard. They're swamped. And
completely. And they also have really limited budgets. Like I know, for example, my son's school has changed their catering providers recently because they could not afford the last one. And this is the thing. It also needs to come from higher up, and I know that budget is obviously stretched everywhere, but it does need to come from higher up, because, like I said at the start, it's so school dependent, and it really shouldn't be. It should be a standard that our kids go to school, our kids get a healthy meal.
Poor
Boom,
teachers.
tick. Yeah,
they have so much on their plate.
So much on.
Teachers, you are incredible. And if anyone's
really
a teacher
are.
Listening, if you could help us on this front, that would be
please.
amazing.
If anyone is interested, I would honestly say please get in touch, because I do really want to do some things about this. But I think it needs to be a big, like a Jamie Oliver style. Yeah. What he did changed things for such a long time. We had the school food plan come out after that. We had school food trust guidelines, and those need changing and adapting right now. In my opinion, they need to be updated in relation to everything
because of COVID,
completely.
and everything needs to be brought back up. And the government is so busy focusing on taxing everything that it's just like, come on, let's get back to what's happening.
But Jamie did such a good job. Let's do it
well
again.
Done,
let's
Jamie.
do it again.
Let's go again. Right, let's talk about plant-based nutrition a little bit. And when I say plant-based, I'm actually going to use the word vegan here instead, because I think that's probably the differentiation. Most people hopefully listening to this podcast know plant-based isn't vegan. It's just real plants.
Yeah.
But there's a kind of popular movement with some people online that are very anti-certain food groups. And is it possible, if you're a vegan parent or you want to omit certain things, is it okay to have plant-based milks? Is my question.
Good
I think we should touch on it because there's so much fear-mongering online, and you can break it down.
Well, seed oils,
I know they're full of them. God,
I know
you've
spoken about them on your podcast recently, haven't you? And I've done a lot of stuff about seed oils as well. But yeah, I mean, so a lot of unfounded scaremongering again around this.
With cancer links too.
Yeah.
And that's what's
God,
awful.
absolutely.
Like the worst of the worst
Yeah.
when it comes to fear-mongering.
Exactly that. And I mean, if you are needing, for whatever reason, to put your child on a plant-based milk instead of cow's milk, so in the very, very basic of it, cow's milk is very nutritious. It's a nutritious food. It's got protein, it's got vitamins and minerals. It provides energy. So what we want to try and do is to replicate that in a plant milk, but it's very, very hard because plant milks are often much lower in calories, much lower in protein,
and the
taste is different, and they also don't contain the same amount of vitamins and minerals. So those vitamins and minerals are added into the products. Not all of them. You have to be very careful, but ideally you want to be looking for a plant milk that has calcium, B12 and iodine.
Iodine is the key, guys.
Those are
missing.
really important. And actually, since I actually... Sorry to name drop again, but I was actually on Jamie and Jimmy's Friday night feast talking about iodine. And honestly, I reckon it must have been 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
And since then, the change to the amount of milks that have iodine in has been brilliant. So many, many more do. But what you need to do is fortified. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same as cow's milk. It still will not necessarily be as nutritious. However, all this talk about the bits that are added into it, the rapeseed oil, these are added in really small amounts. They are regulated. But the main thing I would say is it always comes back to variety. So I'm a huge advocate of variety. If you can, vary the different milks that you offer. Try and choose fortified ones where you can, but vary what you do give. So at my house, I don't know about you, Rhi, but at my house, we have cow's milk, we have oat milk, we have soya milk.
You could just open my fridge door and I have a selection of every type of milk.
Milks. And I know that isn't for everybody, but that gets away from this problem of, if you tell people to have soya milk, they're like, oh no, I've been told not to give soya milk to my baby. If you tell them to have oat milk, oat milk's got rapeseed oil
and then they'll accept more, allergies aside, they will then accept and have a variety of tastes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Exactly that.
But what about the organic things? I think people need to understand that you can't really get organic and have fortification.
Yeah. So this is the trouble. And again, parents often say to me, oh, it's so annoying. I really want it to be organic because I don't like all the ingredients that are in the non-organic ones. But I also know it needs to be fortified. And unfortunately, you can't have both. So you kind of have to choose one or the other. And the fortification for me is really important because if kids aren't having cow's milk in their diet, if they're not having much in the way of fish, which is pretty typical, if they're fussy, especially iodine, B12 is going to be really challenging to get in the diet. Yeah. Calcium, not so much. You can get calcium quite easily on a plant-based diet, but the B12 and the iodine are ones that I would be watching out for. So you can obviously choose other sources of those. You can fortify, there's other ways you can get it in their diet. But if they're not having any cow's milk, I would definitely be saying we want to look at those nutrients. So, I mean, that's not a very clear-cut answer, is it? Again, it's not the sexy, this is toxic for you answer. It's nuanced. But what I would say is if you need to choose plant-based milks, please do choose fortified and think variety. That would be my main recommendation.
100%. No, I couldn't agree more. I think that was a very thorough explanation. Charlotte, Christmas, Halloween, sugar, feasts. Yeah. How on earth have we got to this point of excess, first of all? And second of all, obviously we want our kids to enjoy food and have fun. I mean, no one doesn't want that. Every parent will want their kids to have a great Halloween and Christmas. But
it's so hard, yeah.
Where do I start?
Yeah, it's really tricky. And I think, just like you said as well, Rhi, it probably wouldn't be as bad if you didn't have you pick your kids up from nursery and they've got a cake. You pick your son up from school and there's another packet of Haribo being brought home. It probably wouldn't be so bad if these weren't also becoming everyday items. If it was just Christmas or Halloween.
By the way, my son's rugby practice every Sunday that he does, they give Haribo packs after every rugby practice every Sunday.
Oh,
so it's
gosh.
become like, it becomes a thing.
That's the thing.
Yeah, I don't
and with
actually
kids, it does become
give them
a thing.
to him, but they're everywhere.
Yeah. Well, like my son, every single year he's gone into school around his birthday and he's like, Mum, everyone brings sweets in. Why can I never bring sweets in? And I'm like, your mum's job doesn't really allow her to endorse that. It's so tricky, especially when you get to his age, because he really does start to notice, like, we have different things in our packed lunches when we go to sports. He really does start to notice that. He
How
said
old
to me,
is Rafi now?
he's 7 and he was at a football thing in the summer holidays, and honestly, I picked him up and he said, Mum, when can I have normal food? And I was like, well, what do you mean by normal, Raf? And he's like, well, everybody at football has a packet of crisps and I never have them. I only ever have healthy food. And I was like, oh my God, my heart is breaking right now. But he's my good eater, so he loves food. I think he just had this like FOMO moment where he was like, every single kid here has a packet of crisps, and my mum gives me, oatcakes and veggie sticks and
all the healthy crisp options you can get.
Exactly. Well, that's what we did. I said to him, right,
yeah.
Raf, let's come up with a compromise, okay? I'm not going to give you a packet of
Quavers.
Salt and vinegar. Whatever, because it's just not
Quavers,
for me.
by the way. Oh my gosh, all these
Skips
foods.
was mine. Skips was my
God,
thing.
they melted on your tongue.
Melt on your tongue. They are, we can see why they're
those.
attractive to kids. We really can. But we came up with a compromise and we said, well, let's go and have a look at the aisle. Let's choose some that are a bit more healthy options. And actually, I quite like Twiglets because they are a bit more, they've got some Marmite, they've got a bit more flavour.
Memories.
Yeah, exactly. So we went with that, and my son loves Marmite. So I was like, okay, well, that's an easy one. I'm not saying that Twiglets are the healthy option. I'm just saying that was the one that I was slightly happier to choose. But anyway, back to the topic. Yes, it's every day for a lot of the time. So when you then have this like, oh, it's just the one, so it's just an occasion, it often isn't. But I think it just depends on your stance. And I do firmly believe that we shouldn't be restricting those foods around the kids, because it definitely does put those foods on more of a pedestal. And we know from research that the more you restrict food, the more likely kids are to be like, aha, hold on, that's the one to aim for. That's what I actually want. So I think overly restricting doesn't help. What I like to talk about often is covert restriction, which sounds a bit cunning, but it's more about like
restriction. Go there.
So as in
what
like
is this?
Not having it really obviously available. It's not in the home 7 days a week, which means that your kid's not going to be exposed to it every day and be thinking, oh, I want that. It might be that, okay, we've been out for Halloween, let's have a look at our sweets, let's have some now, and then let's put them away for tomorrow. And when you put them away, you're putting them so that they're not somewhere they're going to see them every morning.
Because they do forget.
And they do forget. And every single year.
Depending on the age, I can
imagine. Well, no, both my two. Really? I thought, am I going to get away with it this year? We put them away the day after Halloween. They have not asked for them since.
Yeah, exactly.
And when my daughter came down on Halloween day, I had stupidly left a bowl that we'd put outside of different things because we left our house and we went away. So I had put a small bowl of things outside the front door, and I'd left that on the side. And the first thing she said was, Mum, can we have those? And I thought, oh God, why did I leave them out? But anyway, I don't restrict, but then it's covert. So it's not available, it's not accessible, it's not visually there all the time. So that's one thing that I try and do a lot of the time. And the other thing is, on those occasions like Halloween, Christmas, and I know, again, this is age dependent, but make your own traditions that aren't around food.
Yes.
Apple bobbing, sitting at the table, getting them involved in helping you make things, laying the table. I remember when I was a kid, one of my favourite things at Christmas was writing name places and drawing little pretty pictures and folding them up and putting them by everybody. Yeah. What traditions can you create that aren't around food? Is it stomping in the leaves Halloween morning? Is it going out for a Christmas walk? Is it a game that you guys played together? Is it getting the kids involved in making something with you? Because there's so many other things that they will love, especially if it's that one-on-one time with you.
The like pumpkin seeds.
Yeah, exactly.
Like just getting them involved
the
with like doing the pumpkin and then cooking with it. And what do you think about personal friend question. So I have put in the fridge, because I've done a lot of research recently on ultra-processed foods, and I've changed the type of chocolate I would consume. And I am going for, I always did like dark chocolate, but I'm definitely more of instead of my Cadbury's consumption, which I was addicted to in pregnancy, I have kind of switched.
Okay.
I'm more of an Ombar, I'm more of a Lindt, I'm more of a hotel snobby chocolate, basically. I'm a snobby chocolate person. And every now and again, I will go back to my Cadbury's, but I make it kind of available. So Zachary and not Theodore, he can't even reach, he's so small, but he's only 2. But Zachary can open the fridge and see. And I kind of have it there so he can see there's always this dark chocolate. And I think it's worked for us because every now and again he's like, can I have some chocolate? I'm like, yeah, fine. I don't mind him having a little bit of this dark, nice chocolate.
Completely,
And then he actually feels like he's had chocolate. But would that backfire on me because he sees it all the time?
I don't necessarily think so. I think it depends on the context. So, for example, lots of people have like a sweetie drawer. And I think that is often like super temptation. And then when the kids know it's there, they will ask and ask and ask. Right. So, but I think the way that you're doing it actually sounds quite good in the sense that you're kind of positioning it in the sense that it's just like the other foods.
Yeah, that's how I'm trying it.
It's just like the other foods.
Yeah, it's normal food in the house. And also dark there is quality chocolate.
Exactly, dark chocolate. And also you can't eat a lot of dark chocolate because it's so rich. No. So actually you are talking here about role modelling moderation, role modelling that it's not restricted, role modelling that it's available, role modelling that it's just another food.
Yeah.
And I think that's great. I actually really like that. My mum has that. She always has dark chocolate slabs frozen. She has it in their freezer and she just snaps a bit off. Yeah. And whenever the kids go round, they will have like a bowl of nuts and seeds, or a piece of fruit and a piece of chocolate. Yeah. And it's just, I actually really like that. I think it's all about context.
Yes, it is.
And if you've got a sweetie drawer of these restricted foods that kids are like desperate to have, that's a bit different to having a little square of dark chocolate in your fridge that you give out. And I always say this as well, like you wouldn't give kids broccoli every single day. It wouldn't be like broccoli Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And it's the same with those foods. It's all about that moderation. How often are we having it and how much are we having of it? Because that matters.
It's our relationships with food.
Yeah.
So much stems down at home to how the parents brought up their relationship with food, the kitchen they create, the environment they create. It can help, guys. It's really big. Supplements. I have to go there before we do questions from listeners. Everywhere I look, there are multivitamins for children, and everyone's like, why aren't you doing a multivitamin for children? I'm like, because I don't personally believe. I'd love to hear what your views are on all these elderberry extracts. And there are so many, especially in the winter. Everyone's like, oh, I should get my child to eat this. And I'm thinking, you're having a satsuma every day. It's probably got more.
Well, exactly.
Tell me, Charlotte.
I just did a post about magnesium as well, because that's been huge in the press.
Everyone wants it.
And so many people have written to me. So I just did a whole blog about magnesium because lots of people think it helps with sleep and things like that. But actually, it's so easy to get magnesium from the diet. And what I wrote in my blog is that, there isn't a massive amount of evidence on magnesium and that it has an impact on sleep or any of these other factors. But actually, we can get enough magnesium from our diet. Yes. So actually focusing on those food first is important. So I'm the same as you. I'm a true believer in food first. There obviously are some nutrients, especially vitamin D, that we can't really get from the diet that we do need to include. But I actually do think that multivitamins can have a place. But I think they are not as an alternative to food. They're not as a swap for a balanced diet. And also, what's out there on the shelves at the moment is not okay.
It's not good.
Parents are so confused about them. They are impossible to read the packaging. The NRV is legally has to be based on adults, not kids.
Yeah,
so that in and of itself is already confusing to parents.
The reference value, like all these things, people don't even know that.
Exactly.
It would just say NRV, and everyone's like, well, what percentage is this? So it says a high number, therefore it must be good.
Exactly. And a lot of the multivitamins have like 2.5 micrograms of vitamin D when the recommendation is 10. Yeah. So you're like, well, do I take 4? And then if you took, it's not okay. It's a confusing market. I actually do believe that there could be a benefit of a multivitamin for certain children. So those who are super fussy, those who have multiple allergies, possibly vegans and vegetarians, there could be a benefit. And also as a safeguard, you might want to go, do you know what? My kid's eating a balanced diet, but they're up and down. They've been a bit unwell. They've lost their appetite. I'm going to use this not as a replacement, but as a bit of a coverall. And also the other thing with the vitamins, minerals is because the NRVs are based on adults, quite often they contain very high amounts of nutrients that are not appropriate for children. They're not based on what is the recommendations for children.
And the supplement companies don't actually realise. Sometimes people make supplements with no nutrition professional involved.
Yeah, completely.
So they take the adult NRVs, put them on the back of children's supplements, and they can get away with selling those.
Well, the thing is that the NRVs legally have to be based on adults, but it doesn't mean that the stuff inside has to be high. It doesn't mean that you have to then provide enough to meet an adult's daily guidance. It should be adapted for children.
Exactly.
So, oh my God, I could talk forever about this. But basically, yes, vitamin D standard for all children.
Yeah.
Our government recommend A, C and D, but that is for certain population groups. Not all children will need A, C and D. But like I say, I am not massively anti-multivitamin in certain situations.
I agree.
I'm anti what's currently available. Because I just don't think there's anything that ticks the boxes.
100%
so
agree.
that's my take.
100%. Because everyone always asks me, Nutrition Plus, why haven't you done a children's multi? I'm like, because personally, it's a minefield. It's very difficult, completely. And only certain population groups need it.
And it's really hard to get it right.
And I'd worry that everyone would then buy it that didn't need it as well. And that's also detrimental.
Yeah.
So it's just such a risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Questions from followers. I need to get a few in for you, Charlotte.
Sorry.
Lucy, this is a really, really good one.
Okay.
I can relate. A lot of my family members, especially my mother-in-law, the grandparents, like to offer my children biscuits and sweets as a reward for doing things like tidying up their toys. I'm not comfortable with this. I don't see them because I leave them with them a lot of the time. Is it okay? Or what can I do? Okay, so first of all, comes back to what is going on at home. What are you instilling? What are you doing? That's the number one thing. Don't switch up what you're doing. It's not ideal to be offering foods as a reward because it massively increases that food hierarchy. And it also leads children to think they have to earn those kind of foods. They have to earn the sweets. They have to earn the good stuff. Whereas actually we want foods to be food because we eat it. We eat it because we enjoy it. We eat it because it helps us feel good, feel full, feel energized, whatever. Not what we grew up with.
Earning it, exactly. Yeah. That idea of earning it, that idea of like one more spoonful, otherwise you don't get your pudding. All of that stuff is not good psychologically for relationships with food. So I'm not a fan of food rewards, no. Other rewards, I'll read you a book, I'll take you to the park, I'll hold your hand, I'll watch a movie with you, I'll, whatever your child will love, because do you know what? They love that time with you. They do. They love that completely one-on-one. My phone's away. There's nothing else distracting me. I'm here with you. That actually is what kids want. And I think that a lot of them will want that more than sweets.
They get less of us today than they did 10, 20, 30 years ago because we've got so much hard.
Yeah, completely.
It's a hard time.
So I would say to that mum, carry on with what you're doing at home. Have a chat with the family if you can. See if they can give other rewards that aren't food related, because they are accidentally putting that food on more of a pedestal.
Agree.
So that's what I would say.
We are going to go straight on to our fact or fiction round, actually, because I feel like we've covered a lot of the other questions actually within it. But
sorry, I have talked.
No, I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. Okay, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, fact or fiction, Charlotte? You shouldn't give your kids peanuts.
Fiction, but not whole nuts. Please don't give them whole nuts.
Children who are formula fed don't need any supplements.
Fiction, because A and C are recommended from when a child is having less than 500 mils of formula.
Perfect. Children have an innate preference for savoury foods.
Fiction.
Fiction.
Sorry, I'm trying to get my fact and fiction.
Yeah.
Fiction, because they have an innate preference for sweet foods.
Yes. Low-fat dairy products are now a better option for young children.
Fiction. Children can have the semi-skim milk is now okay for children to be given from 1 year of age if they want. Definitely not a better option. It depends on your own situation.
Okay. Young children can't get enough nutrients from a vegan diet.
Fiction. They can, but they will need to supplement, specifically with B12, vitamin B12.
Perfect. Everybody should be aware of reading the labels on the back of their food. Fact,
I think, but I mean, they're very hard to interpret, right? So, and who has time to go around looking at all the labels? But it's good to have some knowledge on it, let's say.
Honey shouldn't be given to infants.
Fact. Sorry, I love it. Stumbling my words.
Sometimes I want to say true. And
fact. Yeah, true.
True or
fact.
false. Yeah. Packed lunches are healthier than school dinners.
Fiction.
Depends what's in the lunchbox.
It really depends.
And finally, most snack food is targeted to children in a healthy way, and it's suitable for lunchboxes.
Fiction. Yeah, not the biggest fan of the snacks for kids, and that needs a whole overhaul. That could be a whole other episode, Rhi.
It really could. Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you.
There's a lot of false fiction in that. We wrap up with a food for thought, and I think I'll just start today by saying, like we said at the beginning of the episode, it's really hard. We're not pointing blame at anybody. We're just trying to simply state the facts, our opinions as well. I'd say it's like our informed opinions, but also as a health professional, basing on the evidence, what we're able to action and say. So do go out there, just empower yourself. If you've got this niggling thought in the back of your mind that you're not happy with something to do with your child's diet, you can do something. You can. And you can always seek out Charlotte and I, and you can always see resources out there. So Charlotte, if you could give everybody a take-home message, what would that be?
My take-home message will be start young, getting your kids eating well, but it is never too late to make little changes. And sometimes the little changes matter so much more than trying to do big overhauls or cutting out whole food. So I guess that would be my take home. And also, please take the pressure off yourself. It's not your fault. It's a very difficult, tricky environment to be feeding kids in.
It is, absolutely. But if you can change your home and you cannot have bottles of Coke or whatever it is on display, go for it.
Brilliant.
Charlotte, where can everyone go to learn more about you?
So I have a website, which is www.srnutrition.co.uk. And I promise you, there is not a single question on there about feeding kids that is not answered.
Agree.
I also have my book, How to Wean Your Baby and How to Feed Your Toddler.
And how to...
And how to feed your family. Sorry, I always forget that one. I also have my 3 books. I have courses, loads of fact sheets, and on my Instagram, which is at @sr_nutrition, I also waffle on a lot about feeding kids.
Oh, Charlotte, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. Loved that.